Welcome to our Free Speech Zone, where we do a deep dive into trauma and reintegration. This is Combat Citizen. Welcome back to the Combat Citizen Trauma and Reintegration Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Stanton, and we are doing a deep dive into your trauma and reintegration. So thank you for all your likes, subscribes, and the shares. And I just ask that you continue sharing this as far and wide as you can. I mean, it is a world thing, so and there's veterans everywhere. So I just want to get it out there. So thank you for that. Also, just wanted to pay kudos to our sponsor, BattleBox, a hard carrying case that allows you to be able to carry essential oils or anything else that you want to keep protected while you're going from place to place. So the website for that is battlebox.co. If you have any questions, just shoot me a message. We can get you hooked up. So anyways, we had some good two first sessions with Joy Montgomery, and we were bringing it back on. We thought it would be a good idea to kind of have a couple of regular episodes where we kind of dive deep into the let's say the transition process from soldier to civilian, and going from being in the military life to being in the civilian sector, job related, things like that. So Joy is a good person to be able to put you on the right path to putting together a resume and getting you in front of the people that need to be that you need to talk to get those positions in the companies that utilize your skills or your KSA's knowledge, skills, and abilities. So yeah, dropping a military term there, all you also should know about that. But USA Jobs, all that good jazz. So anyways, welcome back, Joy, and I appreciate you jumping on some regular episodes here to help us get through the process of doing this transition from military to civilian.
Thank you, Ryan. Actually, you're giving me an opportunity. I get to talk to lots of people with this and maybe help someone.
Well, that is a great goal, and I appreciate you wanting to jump on this. I wouldn't call bandwagon, but something that'll be able to allow to help out more and more veterans out there. So let's do this. Let's get started. I want to actually kind of jump into this your website here, the rebootcamp.us. So if you haven't, if any of you are listening to this and you got your computer in front of you, I just ask that you type in this link, and then we can kind of go through it together. So it's basically the website itself is Reboot. So REBOOTCAMP.us, and then we'll actually be clicking on the job search roadmap, which in your upper right hand corner bar is the second option that says job search roadmap. So click on that, get it all ready to go, and we'll move forward. So all right, so I'm gonna be the guinea pig, just letting you know. It's gonna be fun. I don't know if it's gonna be fun, but we're just gonna go through it. So so I am gonna pose on this episode as a newly transitioned soldier that is in need of a civilian job. So I'm gonna let Joy kind of take the reins, and I am just serving as I found her website, or found the contact related information to get to her, and I reached out to her and we started the process. So thank you, Joy, for helping me out with my transition.
And thank you, Ryan, for getting in touch with me. I'm really happy to be able to do this. A while back, I was at a welcome home for veterans, and someone came up and pulled the veteran away, said they didn't need to talk to me. They needed to stay with their own kind, that they didn't need a handout. And I tell people, this is not a handout, it's a handshake. And it's something I am grateful to be able to do, because I was not brave enough to go serve. but I have some skills that I can offer in appreciation for what you've done.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I appreciate you speaking with me about this.
Yeah, and it's more than just a decal on the back of my car.
Yes.
So we talked a little bit about the master file,
mm-hmm.
and we've had a chance to do that already. And that's one of the interesting things is I've seen over and over again that people will get stuck on creating their master file. And they're trying for perfection. So they'll just keep going and going and going. And I've had people who, for more than a year, sometimes 2 years, just keep tweaking the resume and never get to take action. They never get around to it. So when I say in the roadmap here, I say, no, don't let it be a roadblock. It's supposed to be a roadmap that you're using, not a roadblock. And you get that done, and now don't worry about it. It's good enough. If it's 100 pages and it's not perfect, it has everything you have to offer in it. If you think about it, when you go into a supermarket, a really big supermarket, and you look at the cereal aisle, that cereal aisle, people have spent billions of dollars to try and figure out how to get you to buy their box of cereal. And pretty much when you get back and you're looking for a job, this is a marketing campaign. You're a box of cereal. There are lots of other boxes of cereal, and your resume is the label on your box of cereal. So if it doesn't say the right things, you're going back on the shelf, and they're going to look at another box to find the right things. And it's a little bit hard for people to think of themselves as nothing but a commodity. But in a way, that's the best approach to take. So, Ryan, you're nothing but a box of cereal now.
Okay. That's a very, very interesting term. It's interesting. Yeah, I like that. I'm a box of cereal. Okay. So how does that help me?
Well, fortunately for you, you're like SpongeBob as a box, because you can actually walk and talk. And after you got that master file, and you've been building your network since you were still in the military, so you are in touch with people who've already made the transition. You're in touch with people who are still serving. You're in touch with everyone you can think of who knows who you are and what you can do.
Okay.
And that's really important, that you stay in touch with them, and you make it friendly. You're not going to hit everybody up for a job. You're simply saying, hi, I'm getting out, or I am out already, and I'm looking. If you hear about anything that you think might be a fit for me, let me know. So it's not putting them on the spot, but it's keeping you front of mind with them. And you do things like you remember a shared event that you had with them. You remember their birthday if you know it. You remember to congratulate them when you see on LinkedIn or Facebook that some milestone has happened in their life. You're not just adding people to a list. They're not notches on a bedpost. They're real life connections that you want to be able to keep. So that's a huge piece of it. And one of the things that happens when you're building your network is it will help remind you of some of the things you've done that you might have put out of your mind. So here's one of the first questions I always ask, and that is, Ryan, tell me about a time when you exceeded expectations.
I'm trying to think. I got to think about this one.
That's always the first answer.
Let me think about this one. Yeah. Okay. Exceeded expectations. Probably going above and beyond to help out a fellow soldier in the position that I'm in.
That's exceeding expectations, yes. So those are the kind of things that you have in your master file, and they're the kind of things that might come up in discussions with people while you're building your network. You know, as example, just to kind of tweak their memory, and make them think about the kind of positions you would be good for. So those things, and most of the time I don't get an answer like that. I never exceeded expectations. I just did my job.
Oh.
And this is another thing. You were someone before you went into the military, and you will be someone after you get out of the military. And all of those things go into your resume, your master file. So even one of the people that I was working with put down their Eagle Scout experiences, college projects that were done, even high school projects that were done. If they seem as if they could ever have value in a workplace, they belong in your master file. And those people who know about that belong in your network. So the two go hand in hand. And I don't know if you want to move on into another step or if you want to stick with the master file in your network for today.
So it depends on how much information that you can bring to the conversation, or we can just jump to the next one. It's fine. I just want to be able to add value overall, to. So yeah, let's do that. Let's do more of the master file if you have anything more.
Okay, so when you talk about having helped a fellow soldier, what exactly did you do?
I had a soldier that recently had gotten back from deployment, was dealing with PTSD, was dealing with those kinds of issues, and then he needed to be able to get in contact, or at least have those conversations with the VA, and to figure out his ratings and all that kind of stuff. And my above and beyond was basically reaching out and also giving those phone calls to the VA to kind of start those conversations, which was not necessarily my job to really do. There's kind of a gray line, but I kind of was like, you know what, I'm just going to do this anyways because I really want to see this soldier successful.
So when you talk about something like that, and you think of it in terms of entries in a master file, you wind up multiple entries in your master file. Because one of the things you did was you researched to find out what was available. So there's a skill that goes into your master file, research. Connecting becomes another skill that you have. And that's something that you add to your master file, and you figure out how to word that in the best possible way. And when you're wording these things, you actually look at job descriptions, and you take the words that are being used in job descriptions in areas that you want to be in, and you use those terms and words in your master file.
Okay.
So you become a match. You're speaking the same language as the place you want to be. And that's one of the things almost always with a military resume. That is not speaking the same language as anyone who's not in the military. About half of it will be acronyms.
Yes.
And they say nothing to people. They need translation. And that, of course, is the military translator that I mentioned in the roadmap. But each thing that you think of, whenever you think of something you've done, you break it down into the components. Because within that larger thing that you did, there are multiple components, and they won't always fit the situation you're sending a resume for. The whole block might not fit, but some of those components will. So you need to be able to select the components that are to your benefit. Just like the box of cereal, we want to know if it's gluten-free. We want to know how much iron it has. And instead of saying it has a bunch of vitamins, you actually say what vitamins it has and how much of it. Okay. And that's pretty much to do with the accomplishment statement. As soon as you think of something you've done, you break it down into the components. And when you're doing this, they all feed on each other. So while you're thinking about the things you've done, this is not a sequential thing. while you're thinking about the things you've done, you're also building your network, because then you remember someone that you haven't gotten into your network yet who was part of that event.
Okay.
So the whole thing is dynamic and continues to grow, and it continues to grow throughout your working life. And you never delete anything from your master file. You never cut anyone out of your network unless you've done something really egregious and you simply don't want to be part of their life anymore.
Sure.
But for the most part, you're continuing to build.
I was always told from a good mentor of mine, never burn your bridges unless you really need to, because you never know, even with somebody you didn't, even with somebody that you didn't agree with, or you didn't work well with, or didn't like, or they didn't like you, never burn your bridges, because 10 years down the line, you can come back to that person and you're just fine.
Yeah.
And then you're just connecting over, you know, whatever you're shooting the shit with, you know, to be able to get anywhere.
Yeah. And that's the thing. A lot of times people do that. You know, they have words with someone and they cut off the relationship. You run into people who haven't spoken to their mother in 15 years. And you think, what is wrong with you? There must have been something good about her somewhere along the way.
Yeah, there's something that's definitely should be there to connect to anybody and everybody. Is that what you're saying? Right?
You know, unless, I'll use a World War II reference, unless it's a Panzer division coming across that bridge, keep it open.
That's awesome. I like that reference. Yeah, I've always gone off of that saying for the longest time, ever since I heard it, because it has helped me in the long run. And I think it's a great thing, is never to eliminate anybody in your network, like you're saying, because you never know when you're going to need it.
Or when they might need you, and that could surprise you completely.
Sure. Like I just, I had a kind of an odd experience with a sergeant when I was in the military. And we kind of left it at kind of an odd, I don't know, odd experience, odd, you know, relation, I guess. And so I recently just saw a picture of him posted on Facebook, and he's out of the military and he's got this beard on. And first thing I was jumping on, I was like, hey brother, you've got an awesome beard, looking awesome, you know. And it was just in for us, we were at odds in the military, but it's like outside of it, I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to say anything. I'm over that, everything that went on anyways, trying to at least. And I'm like, you know what, hey, you know what, I'm going to give him a compliment because he's got an awesome, like, Viking beard, you know, going on. So I'm like, yeah, brother, you got a good beard. So awesome.
And did he answer?
I haven't heard anything back from him. I know that the guy that actually posted the picture of him and this guy liked the comment. So I know there's at least some kind of conversation there. But you know, something comes out of it's great. If not, then hey, I might even get him on the podcast. I don't know.
That's right. There was a thing going around about it was a job interview, and there's a very proper-looking lady sitting on one side of the table, and on the other side is a very nervous young woman. And the lady, the nicely dressed interviewer, asked her if she's learned any new skills, and the lady takes out a teapot and blows into the teapot to fill the cup that's sitting next to it.
Oh, jeez.
So, you know, maybe getting out of the military and growing a beard is one of those skills that you don't need to put in the master file.
So just letting you know, I grew a beard. No, you don't want to.
You know, there are some really funny things. I mean, there are events that go on, like, 49er events and stuff where they have beard contests. And it's kind of a funny thing. You don't know when you might meet someone like that. And with the idea of building your network, I always encourage people to find something to volunteer with that's related to a passion.
Sure.
For me, my passion is clean technology. I would like, instead of people arguing about politics, I would like everybody to make their decision based on three things: safe air, safe food, safe water. So my volunteering for 14 years now has been with something called a Clean Tech Open. And I often try to get the military involved in that because clean technology is up and coming. There are lots of startups, and where large corporations are not often an ideal fit for someone who has lots of ideas.
Sure.
Because they have to stay in a niche. A small startup needs somebody who knows how to hit the deck running and adjust when they have to. Because a startup is somewhat like combat. You might start every day with a plan, but things are not going to be in the right place for that plan to take place. And you have to figure out how to get to the objective, no matter what is between you and the objective.
Right. It's called in the military, it's called a frago.
And that's the kind of thing that really is beneficial for a startup.
It is the ability to pivot or adapt or move. Yeah.
One of the soldiers I worked with, he started with a company, and I mentioned him in the first interview when they slid the piece of paper across the table, and he was hoping for $25, and it said 50.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The week that he started, and he was really new to the industry. The week that he started, their server went down. Everybody that was there, and it was a small company, all of them were absolutely busy trying to get the server back up. And they were throwing stuff at him and saying, "Can you do this?" And whatever they said, he said, "Yes, I can." And he would get it done. And no one had time to tell him how to get it done. So when it was all over and the server was up and running, people would come around to see the work that he had completed while they were scrambling around. And they could see that he got the objective met, but in ways they never would have thought of.
Oh, wow.
And they would look at it and they would say, "Well, I wouldn't have done it that way." But, that really works. One after the other. He didn't solve a single problem in the way that anyone in the company would have solved the problem.
Yeah, he thinks outside the box is what you're saying.
Yeah, he had absolutely no information on how it should be done.
Okay, so yeah, so he totally, he had the skills and the abilities to be able to figure it out on his own.
Yeah. It's like, "We need you to get on the other side of that bridge." And he'd say, "Okay," and scramble down into the canyon and up the other wall.
So, okay, so that brings up a question. So I'm looking at the master file on the website, and two things come across as interesting. Is so you've got list your education and list your training. So the question that I have in relation to what we just talked about is, how do those two things, how important are those things to the whole, I don't know, the whole process of, resume building and all that stuff?
For some companies, a degree is a requirement. When I got my start in high tech, I had a degree. That's the only reason I got into that first company. And it didn't matter that my degree was in history. Okay. As long as I had a BA after my name on the resume, it was fine. So that's an issue with a lot of companies. They'll require it whether it's a necessity or not. There was never a single time when my history degree was needed at that company.
Yeah, I couldn't see that being a part of a necessary thing for a job. I mean, history, yeah, okay, depending on where you're depending on the job.
And yeah, I was a tech writer for a grocery chain.
Okay. Well, Let me just ask you a quick question. So as far as education goes and a requirement to be able to have a degree, a lot of the times with a job, it's really, it's set in stone. Hey, you need to have a degree for this position. But in reality, what is what do you think is the reasoning behind having a degree of sorts? Is it because of the effort that you put into the degree and to pursuing it and getting it done and all that? Do you think that's what kind of something that they're looking at?
That's part of it. Yes, when people talk about the value of a degree, that's one of the things they focus on is the amount of effort it took, the attention to detail, all of the things that happen for you to finish that work. And, you know, when you're talking about a veteran, they've done 1,000 things more than somebody who goes to college has, and have had to employ all kinds of skills to make it happen. But you don't come out of the military with a bachelor's degree unless you were taking classes while you went. And this is one fun story. I had a fellow come to me, and one of the things he said was, he said, my wife has a degree. She has a bachelor's degree, and I don't. And it's something she's always kind of lorded over me. Well, he had been in for 20 years, and the whole time he was taking classes.
Okay.
And I said, I want you to sign up at either a junior college or a local college of some kind, because the counselors can't talk to you unless you're enrolled. And I want you to see how many CLEP units you get for your military training. And I want you to see how many of the courses you've taken work toward a major. And when he looked at all of it with a counselor at the college, I think he was 9 units short of a bachelor's degree.
Oh, wow.
He's a professor at a college now.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty cool.
And what happened was all those years he had just taken classes that interested him to pass the time, kind of. But they were all in accounting and finance. So he had completed all the units he needed for a degree in finance. He only needed to take a few elective courses to finish the degree.
Oh, my word. That
I mean, you come out with a benefit that you can go to school.
Uh-huh.
So if you just sign up with any college, talk to an advisor, and find out if you can get CLEP units for any of your military training, you might be surprised. And then your resume can say the name of the college, and it can say what kind of a degree you're after in progress.
Okay. So the in progress is important as well, right?
Yeah. And, you know, if it's carved in stone that you have to have a degree for the job, you're not going to get hired there. Unless you know a hiring manager with enough clout that they can say, I don't care, I want this person anyway.
Sure. And then they can help you to work into the fact of you're going to get this degree finished anyways, or you're going to work towards it.
And it's surprising, over and over again, people have been really close to an associate's degree in something. And just that little thing can make the difference. But being able to say expected graduation date that might be 2 years away, it might be a year away. Or another thing, when people say they want you to be multilingual, if you aren't yet and you are studying a language, you can say that you're studying that language.
Okay.
You know, so whenever you run into an obstacle, just as in the military, think about it and figure out if there's a way around it. If there's something you can say that addresses that in a positive way, instead of thinking of it as being something you can't get past. You know, can you find an opening?
Okay. So that brings up a question. We're discussing this, was it the other day about it, that you wanted to discuss this, was the idea of accountability groups. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is kind of a question directed at the education, the being in the military, and then the transitioning out of the military kind of aspect. So I find out a lot of times, and especially with me, being in the military, working full time, or I was working full time in the guard. I found out that I didn't necessarily, not that I was cut out to do education, because I did start it, but I didn't have the people that are backing me, other than my beautiful wife, but the people that are like, okay, so I'm gonna push you. I'm gonna ask you questions regularly if things are going well and whatnot. So the reason why I bring up the accountability groups is because, I think you've kind of touched on a really important aspect, even if it's not for this specifically, but for those individuals that are trying to get a one-up on the transition process before they get out of the military, I think it's a great idea to at least have somebody alongside them to be able to say, you know what, you're going for this degree. We see that this is what's going to happen. You're going to transition in 6 months or a year or whatever you decided on. And then these are the steps that you need to be taking. This is the education level you need to be working towards. And we're going to, give you some kind of roadmap. Yeah, there we go. Roadmap. We're going to give you a roadmap of, where you need to be going. And then we're going to be checking in regularly with you. Is there anything like that presently that you know of?
Well, when I was able to have groups, I had one at the DFW in Livermore, California for a while.
Okay.
And then I offered the Pleasanton, California hall, and that was closer to home for me. And it was a weekly meeting. When I was able to have those, they went really well. I'm still in touch with people who went through those sessions. The very first meeting, I only had 2 people. And at the end of the meeting, it was at the library. It was winter time, so it was already dark out. And we came out of the library, and those 2 people were still talking in the parking lot as I was leaving. Those were 2 people who had never met before from different branches of the service, different levels. There was an officer and an enlisted person. And they were, when I was leaving, they were still talking about what we had talked about in the meeting.
Oh, wow.
And with each time I was able to have a group, it really went well. It went well for the people in it. And part of the reason is that I didn't give them a path. They each gave their own path. But at the end of every meeting, they would say, here's what I plan to do next week. Okay. And at the beginning of the next meeting, everybody would say what they had accomplished of what they had planned the previous week.
Okay.
So then they were accounting to each other, not to me. All I was a facilitator. And it's like at one of the meetings, the fellow said, I'm going to call 20 employers this week. Well, first of all, before you call any employer, you're doing research, lots of research, so you know what to say.
Sure.
So 20 calls would have been,
that's huge,
just about for anybody, even if they could talk to someone 24/7. And that was something he found out that week. He made 3 calls that turned out pretty well because he took the time to do the research, know exactly what that company was interested in that fit him, and realized, oh, it's not just pick up the phone and just start blabbing to somebody. So he learned something. The rest of them learned when he said how it worked out. And it just built on everyone. And one of the things that was important was everyone was on a first name basis. There was no rank. And that was interesting in one of the first groups I had, because I had a corporal from the Marine Corps and who had been he had been deployed 6 times, I think. And in Somalia and the Middle East, I mean, he had been deployed in a lot of hot spots. Okay. And coming back to Somalia, he had gotten the Vietnam vet treatment. He was yelled at and called a baby killer. When in Somalia, what they were trying to do was save people and they were burying babies who were murdered by their own people. So it was horrible. But here he was a corporal, and the fellow who was in the reserve who had been deployed once was a sergeant. And although it was first name and there was no rank, the sergeant could not keep from saying, at every meeting, he'd say, yeah, one of my guys said to me, Sarge. Oh. Every single meeting, we would hear him remind us that he was a sergeant at least a dozen times.
So that brings up a question. So with that process of accountability, do you find it's better that there's no rank within that context of the accountability group? Do you think it works better for them?
Well, I think it has to be part of transitioning to civilian life. Even though corporations have a hierarchy too,
right?
It's not the same as the military. Now, I know actually at one company, we had a picnic where we had a dunk booth, and the chief executive officer was one of the people who was being dunked, and I was the one who needed to pull him out of the tank if he got dunked. And we were going from our building to the main building, walking across the street one day for lunch, and he was coming toward us. And I said, hi, John. And after he was out of earshot, the whole group of people I was talking to said, oh, my God, you called him John? And I said, that's his name. I just knocked him out of a dunk tank about a dozen times last weekend. So,
well,
I think we do each other.
I think the reason why I ask that is because, and Andy and I have talked about this many times prior to us starting this podcast, was that the conversations and the narratives that you have in your head, depending on what rank you are, and if enlisted or officer, can really have a big impact on the conversation that two soldiers do have outside of the military, even inside the military as well. But mainly for this purpose is outside the military, so that, I don't know, when you're trying to talk to somebody about something and you're thinking, okay, so so in the Army, I'm an E4, and I'm talking to a captain, somebody that's been a captain in the military. And so now I know that person's a captain a lot of the times, at least with me. I mean, it may not be everybody, but at least with me, just kind of the way that we're trained, we're brought up in the military, that kind of thing, indoctrinated, whatever words you want to call it. We tend to have that narrative in our head of how I'm supposed to respond or how I'm supposed to communicate. So I really feel it's a great thing when you disengage from all of the rank structure and you just talk, because you're outside the military, you're not that rank anymore. I mean, you may have the experience, you may have, the conversational skills, but in reality, I feel like you're outside the military now, and you should be able to communicate as everybody on the same, I would want to say is communicate as a civilian, because every military veteran is not a civilian per se anymore, because they have so much in their head about military life and military structures that they're not necessarily going to be calling themselves a civilian. But at the end of the day, the conversation has to change. And especially in the accountability group kind of thing like that, where you're trying to get something accomplished, I think it's better to have less rank and more connection.
Well, and it's just the whole rank thing is not expected in the civilian world. So it's something that you kind of need to get used to.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things is you're not expected to question an order in the military. But in many civilian organizations, the kinds you actually want to work for, you are expected to question things if you have a question about something that's about to happen. I had one boss one time she would tell me how she wanted me to do something, and I would know that it was not going to work. And I would say something like, do you want to think about this idea? And she'd say, do what I tell you to do. And then the next day, she'd come around and she'd say, oh, crap, do it right again. Do it your way.
You're like, yeah, but I understand. I'm just going to let you think what you're thinking, and then we're going to, yeah, okay. But I mean, that's got to be frustrating too, so.
But the corporations can't survive if they don't look at every possibility. And startups are even more like that, where they value the input from everybody.
Yeah.
And the same thing doesn't happen as much there at all. About 30 years ago, a young soldier who joined our Toastmasters club asked if I could help with his resume. And he wound up getting a job in Silicon Valley, and he went to work. And he called me the first day after work, and he said, I can't believe it. He said, I was sitting there in the little lunchroom with my brown bag lunch. And this guy came in and sat down at the table with me and said, hi, Dwight, how's it going? And what do you think so far? And it was the guy who owned the company sitting there talking to me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I didn't know how to act. I didn't know, if I should stand up and salute him or...
Yeah, no, that tends to be, yeah, I can understand. I can relate. So, yeah, I think, I think what ultimately wanted to accomplish with this episode was definitely going through the first section of the website and in your process. So we did everybody, we did going through create your master file, looking through that with your skills, all that kind of stuff, translation of that information, your education, the training, and that kind of how that relates back. And then also looking at the aspect of possibility of accountability, being able to communicate with somebody else and be able to say, hey, I'm going to do this. And then next week they're going to ask you, and you're like, okay, so I did this. If I didn't do this, then obviously, we're going to look at other avenues of approach, something that we can help you out with. We didn't touch on that, but that's one of the things that I was thinking about there, Joy, was, not if you did get something done, then you're like, so what was it? What was it that you're stuck on? What was it that we need to help you out with? And I've been part of accountability groups that definitely help you out as far as business wise in that aspect. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. After they accounted for the previous week, most of the rest of the meeting was discussing how things might have been done differently, or maybe somebody during the week had learned the previous week about something with one of the people in the group with them, and they ran into an opportunity that they want to bring up at the meeting. So that the whole thing was about sharing and supporting each other. And it was just a start where they would account for the previous week, and the end where they would set up their plan for the coming week. And then they would keep each other on track with those things. But everything in between was about building and supporting. Which
honestly is the best way to go. I found out personally with business, things I do outside of the podcast, that having a accountability group weekly to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. If I didn't do that, then definitely have somebody that's, I wouldn't say on your ass, but definitely remind you, hey, by the way, is there something that you can help out? We can help you out with. It's definitely a lot better than just getting together and be like, hey, I'm trying, at least you have some kind of goal. You got the SMART goals, you've got whatever things you put into place for that. So I really appreciate the fact of that you have these accountability group, at least an idea of that there, Joy.
Well, and I keep looking for some place to have them. And talking to you, it seems like it's something we could help people just start on their own. In the first group I had, one of the women said, "You know what this is? This is my first civilian unit."
Nice. Well, yeah, I mean, you definitely, it's a camaraderie kind of thing. You know, Andy's smiling and he's definitely happy with that thought. So, you know, in the day and age too, with this whole, everything that's going on in the world, I don't like to put a name to whatever's going on, but you know, the COVID-19 or the pandemic, all that jazz. There's definitely changes that are available. There's technology, there's the Zooms, there's all this stuff to be able to connect people. Like I do a Wounded Warrior program myself, meet with people, you know, virtually. You know, there's a lot of other things that are capabilities out there. And now, instead of having one location, it's definitely worldwide, or it's definitely nationwide, things like that. So yeah, what I'd like to be able to do, so this episode was definitely about looking at the master file. Next episode, for all of you that are still tuned in, will be about, so the next step in that Joy will talk about for the next episode is going to be about building a network. And go ahead.
That today, we touched on that today, and I think I covered that pretty well.
Okay.
So it might be into the job search management file for next time.
So correction, we already touched on the build a network, which is great. And we'll be doing the job search, what you call it, the job search management file.
Right.
So we'll be going over that. So look forward to that next episode, and definitely shoot us some comments about this episode. We'll put the information as far as Joy and where you can reach her, to be able to reach out and say, you know what, hey, I need some help. So yeah, I think Joy, this was a great episode, and I appreciate all the information that you were able to put out.
Well, and one of the things for next time, on the job search roadmap, it says Jibber Jobber is one option. And Jibber Jobber is something that was set up by a fellow who was just getting overwhelmed by all of the different contacts he was making and all of the work he was doing in his job search. And he has offered that, at least to start with, for free to veterans that I refer to him. So it's a tool that can be really useful. So if people want to check out Jibber Jobber ahead of time, then we can talk about that a little bit the next time.
Yeah, definitely.
That Excel works too. It's just, it hasn't got all the bells and whistles that he has.
Okay. So it looks like, so the website itself is the www.jibberjobber.com. So it's spelled like it sounds, JAIBBERJOBBER.com. So we'll definitely take a look at that, and then we'll look at that next episode as well. So
you might even enjoy interviewing him on one of your shows.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely.
He's become a master at networking and building his network. He has traveled all over the world, and he's one of the people who taught me something that I had discounted completely, and that was Twitter. I looked at Twitter a number of times, and I thought, this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen.
That was my thought process too. So,
and somebody would say, I'm getting so much business from Twitter, and I think, how could you possibly get business from Twitter? And I'd look at it again, and it was still a bunch of nonsense. I remember a woman I really respect in a business networking group posted one time, I'll be gone for 20 minutes. I have to wash my hair. And I thought, oh my God, you probably washed your hair before in your life, and I never needed to know exactly when you did it.
Right.
But then my cousin was in a marketing position, and she got on Twitter and she said, in the 140 characters they used to have, I'll be at the Lexington, Kentucky trade show on this date. If this booth number dropped by. She increased the visits to their booth at trade shows 1,000%.
Oh shit. Okay. I'll have to, I started looking at Twitter and start communicating with people there. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to put a little bit more effort into that if that's what you're saying. So
it's how you use it.
Sure.
If you don't use it stupidly, you can use it smartly.
Well, maybe we can chat about that next episode. Kind of give a little information about that. Also, if you could, there, Joy, if you could reach out to the guy for Jibba Jobber, maybe send him my way, and then we can get him on to the podcast.
One of the interesting things that the really smart people do on Twitter is when we're able to travel again and you have a layover somewhere.
Yeah.
They will say what airport they're at and how long they're going to be there and where they're sitting. So it might be a bar or a restaurant in the airport. And they wind up meeting tons of people. One of the guys who does this wound up flying with the Blue Angels through a connection he made on a layover at an airport. Mm-hmm. And one of the guy who started Jibber Jobber wound up with a speaking opportunity in Turkey.
Whoa! Okay.
So it's a matter of the whole thing of building your network is like that, where you're thinking of opportunities and using them wisely.
That makes a lot of sense. I think in this day and age now, with such a connected world, the idea of only thinking of your immediate location, I think is, I believe is kind of outdated now, and we need to be looking at the world of the world's, all the world's a stage now, and we'd be able to communicate and connect and whatever else with. So yeah, when the world decides to say, you know what, things are going great, we can travel, we can do everything we want. I think that's a really good option to be able to connect with more people around the world.
And when you're talking about what you want, that's one of the things I'll ask a veteran is, what do you want to be doing? I had a Vietnam vet come to me who he had retired, and it was right after the crash and everything, and his retirement had diminished by something like 60%. And he said, I can't go back into high-tech sales because I've been out of it for 3 years, and nobody would hire me for high-tech sales.
Sure.
And I said, well, you know how to sell. You can't unlearn how to sell. What do you like to do? He said, what do you mean, what do I like to do? I like to sell high-tech stuff. I said, no, if you didn't have to work, what would you do for fun? And he said, oh, for fun. He said, I would go bird watching. Oh. And I said, so put together bird watching tours and sell them.
Oh,
and he's doing that now. but when I said it, he said, what? I can do what I want to do? And I said, oh, absolutely. You have my permission.
Well, and let's make that the final thought. So on that, it's interesting because a lot of times when people get jobs, they're getting a job so that to make the ends, whatever the wording is. Yeah, anyways, to pay the bills, okay, to pay their life. But to be asked that question of what are you passionate about? What would you rather, if you could do something and you didn't have to be trying to get money from it, what would you do? Like a passion and that kind of stuff. I think that's a great question to ask, because a lot of times people don't think about that. They're just thinking, well, I got to do something to make money so I can pay my bills, to make their ends meet, So cool. So I very, very much appreciate Joy, you jumping on the next episode. So also everybody, thank you for watching. Just make sure to like, subscribe, and share on every social media that you can possible. You talk to people, that kind of thing, and get it out there. So thank you, Joy, and look forward to the next episode. So Thank you, everybody.